They thought they could delete 10 years of my life with a single mouse click at a dawn meeting. They did not realize that the entire digital foundation of their multi-million-dollar operation belonged to me. By the time they figured out that I owned the software keeping them afloat, it was already too late to stop the countdown. My name is Clara Dixon, and I spent a decade building the core infrastructure for a massive logistics corporation called Apex Logics. I walked into the main conference room expecting a routine tech alignment but found the Chief Technology Officer, Julian Vance, waiting with two human resources representatives. The air in the room was freezing, and the corporate executioners looked ready to hand me a very polite professional death sentence. 10 years ago, Apex Logics was just a failing startup running on broken code and desperate prayers. I sacrificed my weekends, my sleep, and my personal life to turn their fragile system into an indestructible powerhouse. I lived on caffeine and slept under my desk during major system rollouts while executives like Julian took all the credit for my grueling labor. They treated me like an expensive piece of furniture rather than the architect of their success. Julian smiled with artificial warmth and told me that my legacy role was being modernized out of existence. He casually stated that a new automated software solution had completely replaced my position, ending my career in less than 10 seconds. They handed me a termination packet, completely unaware that the official separation date they chose was exactly 2 days before my major contract renewal bonus was scheduled to kick in. I did not scream, and I did not let them see me cry over their corporate greed. Instead, I quietly recalled Clause 9 in the proprietary software license agreement that I had written years ago. Corporate legal had blindly rubber-stamped that contract without ever reading the fine print hidden deep within the code architecture. That hidden clause stated that my involuntary termination would instantly void their operational software license. The human resources representative reminded me about my 3-year non-disclosure agreement with a smug grin. She told me that a new engineering team from an outside firm was flying in next week to take over my duties. I signed the paperwork, walked back to my desk, and secretly activated the automated license expiration sequence on my secure terminal. The system clock began ticking down toward total operational blackout. When I returned the next morning for my mandatory knowledge transfer session, the new developers treated me with total disrespect. A cocky young engineer named Travis wore noise-canceling headphones while I tried to explain the complex data routing layers. They mockingly told me they would just rewrite everything on cloud servers anyway, ignoring my warnings about critical system deadlocks. I realized then that these overconfident amateurs had absolutely no idea how to run my creation. Before leaving the building for the final time, I logged into the master database to perform a clean export of my independent source code. I compressed the entire system, encrypted it twice, and sent it to my private corporate entity registered in Delaware. I passed Julian in the hallway on my way out, and he arrogantly wished me luck in my future endeavors. I told him he would need the luck much more than I would. Back in my apartment, I sat in front of my personal computer setup and watched the digital timer descend toward 0. The company blog posted a massive announcement celebrating their transition to modern automation and thanking me for my past contributions. It was a digital parade over my professional grave, using stock photos to erase a decade of my sweat and tears. My sadness turned into cold determination as the midnight deadline approached. Exactly at 1 minute past midnight, the first automated system check reached out to verify the core software license. The validation request returned a critical unauthorized error because the creator was no longer active in the corporate registry. The core framework did not just crash. It began to slowly unravel across 30 separate production servers. Microservices stopped communicating, database clusters froze, and the main operational dashboard went entirely blank. By 2 in the morning, major shipping centers across the country began dropping orders from the queue due to checksum failures. The automated load balancers hit dead endpoints and shut themselves down out of protocol exhaustion. No alerts were triggered because I had designed the system to fail quietly rather than sounding loud alarms. Julian was dragged out of bed by frantic text messages explaining that their entire logistics empire was completely paralyzed. Julian logged in from home and stared at a bright red screen demanding an immediate license renewal from an unknown company. By dawn, National retail partners were calling the chief executive officer directly to demand answers for the catastrophic blackouts. Warehouses were printing blank shipping labels, and millions of dollars in inventory sat rotting on the docks. Julian finally had to admit to the board of directors that I held the launch codes to their survival. An emergency corporate board meeting was called at dawn, and my phone began buzzing with desperate messages from unknown numbers. I finally accepted their urgent conference call while sitting in my kitchen wearing a comfortable grey hoodie. Julian kept his camera off while the corporate lawyers frantically tried to threaten me with legal action. I calmly held up my official federal copyright registration for the software, completely silencing the room. The chief financial officer cut through the legal bluster and asked me exactly what it would take to turn the system back on. I demanded double my original licensing rate, a guaranteed 2-year consulting contract with absolute creative control, and a public retraction of their automation announcement. I told them they could either pay the price of underestimating me or watch their supply chain drown while I enjoyed my morning tea. The chief executive officer did not hesitate and ordered his legal team to sign the agreement exactly as written without any modifications. The moment the digital contract was finalized, I entered my authorization key and the 32 servers instantly blinked back to life. Data. Queues unfroze, orders resumed routing, and the internal communication channels reported that everything was stable. Julian submitted his resignation that very afternoon, leaving the company in disgrace. Now I work from a beautiful beachfront location, managing the infrastructure on my own terms as an independent sovereign contractor. Apex Logics posted a formal public apology, legally acknowledging my role as the visionary architect of their core technology. Other major corporations are already reaching out to my private firm, offering massive retainers for my architectural expertise. I learned that real professional leverage does not come from making noise. It comes from owning the foundation.